Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are diving straight into some critical, hot off the press market data. Today, we're shining a spotlight squarely on the polybutylene terephthalate, or PBT market, for the first week of August 2026. If you're managing supply chains or handling procurement, you already know just how incredibly volatile this space can be. So our goal today is to cut through the noise, lay the data out clearly, and give you exactly what you need to anticipate the market's next move. To get us there, we're looking at the latest intel from Polymer Bazaar. Their entire approach revolves around three core pillars: price, prediction, and profit. We aren't just staring at raw numbers today. We're taking that data and translating it into actual, actionable foresight. Establishing a solid baseline is everything in commodities, and their focus on these three metrics is exactly what we need to make really smart procurement decisions right now. Which brings us to the big, high-stakes question for the week. Is right now, the first week of August 2026, the time to aggressively stockpile your PBT inventory, or should you protect your margins and just hold on to your cash? Every single data point we review today is going to help us answer that exact question for your bottom line. Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the feedstock foundation. Right at the base of the supply chain, we've got our raw material costs in RMB. Purified terephthalic acid, or PTA, is currently sitting at 6,115. Meanwhile, butanediol, or BDO, is at 8,900. Why start here? Because these numbers are literally the bedrock of the entire PBT market. If these foundation stones shift, you'll feel the ripples all the way up the chain to the finished product. Keep these baseline costs in mind as we zoom out to see how the global market is reacting. Moving right along to Section 2, a sluggish global bazaar. Looking over at the United States, we are seeing, well, almost zero movement. The neat grade is sitting totally flat at 112 cents per pound, and the 30% glass-filled grade is also perfectly steady at 262 cents per pound. So why the flatline? Honestly, the data shows that things have just become remarkably sluggish. Buyers aren't panicking, but they aren't rushing either. They've essentially just stepped to the sidelines, waiting to see who blinks first. And across the Atlantic in Europe, it's pretty much the exact same story. The best keyword for it is dull. Demand has been incredibly dull, acting like a giant anchor, keeping prices completely pinned at 1,740 euros per metric ton. When you see this kind of synchronized, widespread hesitation globally, it creates this really fascinating psychological environment. Nobody wants to make a false move. But then we look at China, and things actually get pretty interesting. They're in an off-season phase, which naturally brings weak demand and super cautious buyers. That totally tracks with the US and Europe. But here is the catch. Production costs are actually rising. We've got a bit of a mini mystery here, right? Global demand is weak, buyers are holding back, yet the actual cost to produce the material in a massive manufacturing hub is going up. That is a crucial divergence to keep in your back pocket. Next up, Section 3, the Indian market pulse. Let's zoom in on India and look at spot prices excluding GST across two major regional hubs. In Mumbai, we're looking at a really tight window of 143 to 145 rupees per kilogram. Up in Delhi, it's just a hair higher, sitting at 145 to 147 rupees per kilogram. Comparing these side by side, you can instantly see how incredibly tight and range-bound this market is right now. We aren't seeing any wild regional swings whatsoever. And the reason it's so range-bound comes down to this. The market pulse is defined by a distinct lack of aggressive demand alongside very comfortable material availability. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still activity. Processors are making the purchases they need to keep their lines running, which definitely puts a floor under the market. But that lack of buyer aggression, combined with plenty of supplies sitting in warehouses, is exactly what's freezing these spot prices in place. Which finally brings us to Section 4, your purchasing strategy. Let's circle back to that big question we asked at the beginning, but now with all the context. We know the US is on the sidelines. We know Europe is dull. We know India is comfortably supplied and range-bound. With global demand stalling out like this across the board, what is the actual right move for you? Well, Polymer Bazaar's recommendation is pretty definitive here. We prescribe need-based buying. It really is that simple. Because spot prices simply aren't expected to jump up under these sluggish conditions, there is absolutely zero incentive for you to tie up your capital in excess inventory right now. Stick strictly to need-based purchasing. Buy what you need to keep your operations running smoothly, and keep your cash on hand for the rest. Before we wrap up this explainer, though, I want to leave you with one final thought. We just established that the smart play today is need-based buying because prices are flat. But remember that tension we talked about in China? Production costs are going up, even though demand is weak. How long can manufacturers absorb those rising costs before they're forced to pass them on to the buyer? How long until those Chinese production costs force global spot prices to finally break out of this comfortable holding pattern? That is the exact structural tension we'll be tracking very closely. Thanks so much for joining me today to unpack all of this. Keep an eye on those feedstock costs, stick to your need-based buying for now, and I'll catch you in our next update to see where the market moves next.